Hi everyone, Kiel here. Today I want to make a video to talk about a very useful data visualization chart that you may have seen all over the place. And I want to talk about the circle packing algorithm and how it basically looks like in practice. So it will, maybe you've seen some kind of shape like this, or you have different circles which are inside of other circles, and basically trying to encode a hierarchical data set. So today we're gonna basically see how to create this from scratch using some of the custom operators that I've created for you, so that they're all available for all Cable users based on the very famous and essential data visualization library D3, which stands for data-driven documents. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is to basically create an empty patch. So by now, I think that you should be pretty familiar with how to do that. So you have this this empty canvas here. Okay. Now the first thing we do, as you know, is to put a main loop. So I'm going to put the main loop. Put a clear color just for I don't know. It's just force of habit. So I'm trying to make sure that the background changes. Okay, looks good. Now to create a data visualization, you need data. So I have already uploaded a small data set, and this is where you would have to basically upload your own. We've covered in other videos how to query an API, talk to some other web services, but here we can assume that you get some data back from your API. And if you go here, I've already uploaded this data.json. So let's put it down. You just you can drag and drop here in the patch. Just click on the button, and you would have this this node. So this is exactly equivalent to basically having a query and API, right? It's exactly the same. So we have this data set. How does it look like? So you get an idea. I can open just this glass here, or the wheel, like the gear. So let's just open quickly, and you notice that it is a list, right? It is a list of basically a database extract with worker ID, year, sector, and it's about jobs. So our goal here would be to basically try to organize, create a hierarchy from this data set, and try to display it and change on the fly, and you will see how the circle change. So you can really think of when would you need circle packing, when you need to basically do a group by operation. So I have this data set and I want to group by sector, right? I have different sectors, there are numbers, but you could imagine maybe sector as you work in computer science, you work in data science, you work in agriculture, you work in medicine. It's different sectors. Then in your sector, you have different type of jobs, right? So maybe you're a data scientist or you're a machine learning engineer. So it's different job ID. You have different wage, and you notice that the data is pretty standard, but I think it would be a nice small data set just to understand what we are working with. So think of this. You need to have to create a hierarchy. So how do we do that? By grouping by a key, right? So we could say, hey, I want to group by sector and visualize how many people in my database belong to this sector or this particular job, or maybe first I'm grouping by sector and then by job inside each sector and so forth. So you can nest and have different group by layers. Okay. So okay, we have our main loop, we have our clear color. So first we will have to basically work a bit with the data. And you notice that if you've seen other video, we always, when you want to display many things at once but of the same shape, so in our case many circles, but it could be many squares, the trick, the nice thing with Cables is to use the mesh instancer. So it's very efficient, upload it to the GPU, and it's very smooth. So we know that we're going to have a mesh instancer, so we know that we're going to have things on screen. So probably we need also a camera. So I'm going to start by this orbit controls that we used all the time, just to be able to rotate and move around things. And then layout, or the shape. So I'm going to put a sequence here just to make sure that this operation is, it's just, once again, in our case, doesn't really matter, but just one branch for the drawing of the shape and the other for copying this shape multiple times. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a circle, because I don't know, it's called circle packing, but you will see that you can actually change the shape and it will react accordingly. So okay, I have one circle for now, and I also need a mesh instancer to draw multiple shape at once. And what the second input parameter is the shape. So I'm going to connect the circle here to the mesh instancer. And so just a bit of a trick here, this is being drawn according to your 60 times per second or more, according to your screen refresh rate. So here I'm uploading the circle every time, but if it never changes, why should I do this 60 times per second? I could just do trigger once and say, hey, create the geometry of the circle, pass it to the mesh instancer, and now draw it multiple times according to the arrays that you give as positions. So okay, we have basically the basic structure. So let's put this here. Now let's go back to our data. So we have our data set here, and we know we can also click on the gear to basically try to analyze and extract stuff. But it's already in the right format. It's a list of objects, complex object with different properties. Okay, so we need 3-4 nodes so for the whole circumpacking to work. And you could say, maybe I wish I could have only one node, but you notice why it's important to have different nodes. The first thing we need to check is that you notice that this is actually a list of objects, but the output of this guy is an object. So we need just to convert this, and it's just a regular casting, because in JavaScript an array is actually an object, but in cable land it needs to be it's object to array. I'm just writing on the right operator. So I'm just casting this object to an array, and now we have a list. It doesn't change anything, but now we have this bluish violet port here for the array. Okay, first step. I'm saving. Don't forget to save. Control S to save my patch. Now the second thing we need to do is to create. This is a custom op that you can that you will get from the patch. This node that I created called D3 hierarchy. And this node doesn't draw anything. What it only does is it group by. It basically does an advanced group by according to a certain key that you pass. So you connect the list of objects here, and you need to specify the keys you want to group by. So I know already that I'm going to be able to play with this. So what I could do is, prepare a sidebar so we can type, and it's going to be easy to change how to group things, right? So I'm going to create the sidebar, and then I'm going to create a text input. And I'm going to call this group by, okay? I'm going to take this, and we also covered how we can use the variables instead of having to draw cables everywhere. But for now, I'm going to just take the output of this and put it into the group by keys. So for now, I'm grouping by nothing, and this is not even connected to the drawing. So for now, nothing happens. What are the other options? So notice it's keys. And the way I've designed this, to be simple, is to separate the different groups by space. So I could say I want to group by sector and then job ID, right? I could do both, could do one or the other. You just need to separate them by space. So this is where you're going to type. And this is basically two other options that we're going to see a bit later. And now you notice that the reset, okay, fine. And print hierarchy to console. What it does, this node here, it creates this tree structure, a bit like a cable tree, like this, right? You have the root node, and then you have several, sub children nodes. Now, because each child has a reference to the parent and to the next child, or its children, then it creates a circular structure, right? So it means that you can always reach from any node, you can go back to the root. Let's say I'm here, I can always go up and go back to the root. Or from the root, I can drill down the hierarchy and go and reach any of the nodes. Now, because it's a circular JSON structure, you can actually, if you try to open this in cables, it will basically complain and crash. I will not crash the whole patch, but it will give you an error because it would say this is a circular JSON structure. So because I want to print it, then I'm always looping back to, I'm gonna print the child, but it goes back to the root and I'm printing like an infinite loop. So this is why I created this print hierarchy to console, and we're gonna open the console here. So you can go here. I'm not even sure. Yeah, like here and this. I mean, it's in French, sorry, but it's Control Shift I to open it, and then you get the console here. So now if I go back to my node and I click print hierarchy to console, I have this data, and this is very handy because I can understand how D3 structures my data. So this was my input, right? The list of different objects. Now this is being transformed into this particular substructure, and notice there are new properties: depth, height, and the value. We're going to talk about the value is. This is very important because it gives you basically the size of our circle. And then we have data, which is an internal structure, but children. So from my root node, when I group by sector, I know that I have 34 sectors in my dataset. And then in the first sector, so the ID 0, I know that because I'm the first children, now my depth, if you can consider depth 0 being the root, and you go deeper, so you increment, or it's the opposite of height. Height, it would be how far you are from the top, and 0 would be the base layer, so the top, the leaf nodes, like going back to the objects that you have in your array. So we group them and create this tree. And so now I can access the depth and height, and I notice that, hey, this sector also has children because I'm grouping by sector and job ID. So now I can open the first job ID in this particular sector, open it here, and notice I'm deeper in the tree, and I can also open basically the last layer. So that would be like the actual node, and notice that I get, height is 0, so I'm at the base layer, or I'm 3 layers from the top, so my depth is 3, it's the same. My value is how many children I have in this particular sub node, it's only 1, and I have access to my dataset. So you see that my data that I showed you before is being transformed into this hierarchical structure. That is why we try to represent by basically circles within circles within circles. Okay, so this is the first layer, and so this node here is a hierarchical structure. It doesn't do anything, but it could be used for circle packing or other types of hierarchical drawings, such as the tree map that I will cover in the next video. So this node will be exactly the same. We just create the structure. Okay, so now that it's nice that we have the structure, but we need to do something with it. So the next step would be to actually create the circle packing, to run the circle packing algorithm. So you can type d3 circle pack, which is here. What it needs is to trigger. So first you do the hierarchy, and then maybe you need to trigger it. So if you change any of the properties here, you would need to re-trigger it. So to execute the circle packing algorithm. So let's try this. So I'm gonna connect things here. For now, we're gonna, don't touch any other options. So we consider that, okay, if we run this guy here, then it will run the circle packing algorithm. Okay. And then what? Okay, so now this basically what it does, it's just running the algorithm and transforming this hierarchy using the value property, which has been added by the D3, which basically transforms this value into a radius to scale or circle. So when you run the D3, the output is still this hierarchical object with an added property, basically. And then we need to transform this into a regular position, scale, rotation, no rotations here, but position, scale, and optionally colors, so that we can actually draw it. So I said 4 nodes, right? So we have 2 nodes already with D3. Now this node here would basically create the position, scale, the nodes themselves, and the layer indices. So let me talk about this node a bit deeper. So we need to connect it. That's fine. And you notice the third parameter is called layer indices. you notice that we have this very this complex data structure with different levels of hierarchy. Now, I don't necessarily want to extract all of the tree. Maybe I have 10 layers deep. Maybe I only want layers 7 to 8 or 0 and 4, but not 2 and 3. So I had to come up with a way to basically filter and extract as many layers as we want, all of them or only one, and so forth. So we can really, because depending on what you do, you don't necessarily need to have the big circle that encloses the whole shape. It's kind of the root node, and it doesn't really add any value, just a circle that scales and encompasses everything. But maybe you need only the sub-layer. So by just separating with the space here and typing the layer ID, 0 being the bottom, the leaf nodes, and 1 is the one above, and in our case we have when we run this, so let me rerun this again, we have 4 layers. So like ID 3 would be the top layer, the main root node. So with this I can basically select any layer that I want, and if I don't, I have basically the whole tree, the whole hierarchy. So this is the sum of all circles, and you can wonder why not have different I mean, you can copy paste this and say layer 0, 1, 2 as many times as you want, but here the cool thing is it's only circles, so it doesn't really matter. I can basically read all the circles at once, and they just have different scales and basically z position in our case, so that we can really pack them in a different order in one draw call. So it's very optimal, because you only, with this node, you get the whole hierarchy if you want, and you can pass it to the mesh instancer. So let's try this, and once again, let's maybe be able to select the hierarchy here. So I'm going to copy and paste my text input, and I'm going to call this layers. Okay, and by default it's going to be 0 and 1, space separated as before, right? I'm going to take this, connect it here, save, and in theory I should have a bit, I mean, this is going to be filtered by this. So I can redo my reset again. I don't think and you notice that here I have a bit less nodes now, right? So if I say now only 0, and I need to reset to retrigger it, now I have like half of the nodes are missing, right? So I'm basically filtering, and I'm taking only the leaf nodes, right? But I don't not basically see the other part of the hierarchy. So it would be cool if we could trigger this on demand. So anytime we change something, it will retriggers the whole thing. So you have several ways to do this. The one that I found here would be just to have either a trigger button, or what I did here was just a trigger on change string. So this is a node, change. So basically when you type something else on change string here, right, if you change the group by, it will basically retrigger the whole chain. So I'm trying to put this in the middle, doesn't work. Now, so in theory, if I change that, this will trigger the whole chain. And the layers, I'm not sure if I need to, because yeah, I need to, but just I don't need to recreate the hierarchy, because this is creating the whole hierarchy when you group by, but this selecting layer 0, 1, or 2 is just in this node. So I can use the trigger on change string again and retrigger. So using this and retrigger that if I want to, right? So they are both triggered. This is not a refresh 60 times per second. This is, you do this only once or on change only, right? So let's try this. I have my mesh instancer, and we notice that, oh, okay, this gives you how many nodes you have in the layers that you selected, the positions, the scales, we need them, the nodes, if we end the layer indices, so we know and from which index to which other index this particular layer range spans. So, and you notice that, yeah, it seems that we have stuff on the screen. Let me put this back to D3 by default is in 0, 0 in the corner, and the cables at -1 and 1. So we just need to shift. We can either shift the camera, we can just put a small transform to recenter everything on screen. So I'm gonna put minus 0.5 and minus 0.5. Okay, it's in the center, so we are a bit far, so we can zoom by moving the Z value here or putting the camera. It doesn't matter here because there's only one thing drawn on the screen. And we notice that we have something, right? So the nodes are being organized, and check this out. If I put other indices, then it seems that we have stuff, but they are a bit colliding all, and so it's a bit difficult to see, right? So depending on where you put them, it doesn't really work for now. So what can we do to improve that? So the first thing we'll do would be to maybe try to color things, right? Because for now we're not really sure that we are coloring everything right. And for that, I have my fourth node that I created for you. And notice that, let me just remove the trigger once, because now as we are changing this, we need to refresh the size of the circle. So let me do this again and just disable the drawing of the circle. This refreshing, just to make sure everything runs. Okay. I'm not sure why. Okay, so now that we don't see anything, it's fine. Not sure why it's completely off-centered, but okay, we'll fix that. Okay. I don't know, maybe this transform with the circle didn't work. So now the thing we don't see, we actually have, if we do this group by sector, we have stuff. Yeah, so I was wrong to remove this, sorry. And we need to color things. So my fourth node is called d3 color hierarchy. So this guy takes 3 inputs. So either you have a color key in your node, in your dataset, like red, blue, or HTML color. If you don't, it's fine. This node can color, if you just pass a color array, then you can color each layer of the hierarchy differently. So how do we create a nice color array? So I have a small setup that I can copy paste, or I can redo it. It's fine. Let's do this simply. Let's just simply. So we have a randomer. I need 4 colors, 4 values, 3 for RGB and 1 for alpha. So how many colors do I need? I need how many colors, and depending on the number of layers. So I'm gonna say, okay, I want 3 arrays of 4 value, A, B, C, D. They're gonna range, red is gonna be this, green and blue, and opacity is gonna be 1. Okay. Now I need first input. Here is the flattened node array. So this is actually this. Okay. And now the second value is the colors for each layer. And this is the default color, right? So we can put this to dark red. Now this guy in theory should give me the right amount of color, and then I can apply this to here. So let's try now to group by different stuff. And we're a bit far, so maybe we could zoom in by putting a transform view before the orbit control. So I'm doing this. I'm zooming it a bit. Yes, right. Saving that, and in theory, if I move the seat here, I should be able to change the colors. Now, what more could we do? Yeah, I'm missing something. I'm checking on the other side. I don't have a material, so the color they don't really look right. Yes, that's much brighter. And yeah, we need to create some. So let me just finish this, and we can play a bit maybe with the different values, and have all our hierarchy here. All right. So what can we do? Just checking here. Padding. Yeah, the padding. So we can play with this and the mesh instancer. radius is 1. Yes. So this is what I was a bit wrong. Why was half, but the circle by default needs to be 1, right? Everything is scaled according to this. So this is why I was like, why can't we see really what's going on? The radius was a bit too low. Now notice, this is circle packing, right? But if I change the number of segments of my, let me change the color maybe. Yeah, they're not really great, sorry about this. So let me try to find a better contrast, maybe. Yeah, it's not really great, is it? Yeah, okay, this one, okay? So now check this out. A circle is actually, no circle exists in WebGL, right? So it's basically a sum of triangles. So if I reduce the number of segments, I can really start to create different shapes. So it's still circle packing, but it's not, we don't need to have circles anymore, right? And this could be animated. So on the fly, you can change a bit of the size of your, and how it looks like. And this is actually not really, not easily possible to do with D3. It is, but you have to draw the shape yourself. Here, you don't need to code or anything. And as we progress and we put more and more segments, it looks more like a circle. Now, a parameter that I didn't check, so notice that we are actually in 3D, but there's a parameter that now we can check here in the circle packing. There's this parameter called Z or Z spacing, which basically shows the distance between all the layers like this. So if we change it, we need to rerun the code again. So we can maybe do, I don't know, a slider and change that. So I'm creating this slider here. And I like to have my things organized. So I'm going to push this here, connect my slider after that, and call this spacing. From 0 to 1, okay, it's fine. And because I need to retrigger when it changes, I can also do trigger on change number. So I make sure that when we move the slider, I will really trigger this. So Z spacing and here. So now check this out. I'm moving my spacing, and now you see what I meant. It's really 3 different layers. And this is what we can play with when we select the layers. If I do this, you know, I'm removing some of them, like the back one. Now I'm only keeping the ground layer, so, right? Then I'm adding the sectors, and then I'm adding the root node. If I just collapse everything, it should not be exactly 0. It should be a very small step, but right, depends on the depth testing. But if you do this, then you basically keep a very small value. Then it's fine, right? They're not colliding and drawn on top of each other. And now we can really start to drill and understand what's happening in our data. So first here we group by sector, okay? So removing the big node here, we should only have 2 layers, right? One is the sectors, the pink layer, and inside we have the data. So how many people in each sector. Now if I group by sector and job ID, now I have another layer, right? So I can show them here. So the first would be, okay, the sector, and then in each sector I have this pink ID, right, job ID, and notice that I don't have a job ID, right? And then inside the blue nodes are the people. If I don't need the people, then I can just remove layer 0, and I just have the sector and the job ID, and I can put them in space. I don't know why it doesn't work, but I should be able to change my spacing. It's the first time. Okay, I don't know why this trigger doesn't work, this slider doesn't work anymore. Maybe I did something crazy. A bit weird. Reloading. And basically that's all there is to it, right? So by default it would be nice if we already have a group by, because otherwise it's going to be broken. So we'd say by default we group by sector, right? And then the algorithm runs and it's fine, right? So by default we run by sector, and then we can even move the camera a bit closer, maybe 2. By default, this reloading, yeah, it's too far. So let me just one. Okay. So basically that's it. That's all there is to it. You create this hierarchy, then you basically do the circle packing. You can play with the padding. I didn't play with this, so let me show you what it does. You're here and you want to change the space in between nodes. If I do this, I need to once again trigger the number. So maybe let's do the slider again. So we put this upwards. Usually my patch I use variables, so I don't need to create that and as many cables, but padding 0 and 1 step. I know why it doesn't work, because the step here is 0 and it should be, if you put the step 0 then it never changes, right? So you take this again and we connect to the padding and we retrigger it if we need to. Now if I'm here, I move the padding, right? And you see, like I put more and more space in between all the nodes, so I push it and makes them smaller, right? And if I go back to 0, so with this combination, you can really get really creative. You can really make a real data visualization combined with clicking, and I can show you an example of this in practice in my patches. And this one here was used in a real project, so let me just show it to you here. This is about, basically we try to extract the result, Google result that you get when you type someone's name in Google. And so I can put me, so it's easier to disclose. And so basically what I did here was first to create the circle packing and then trying to push all of the categories here, so they are grouped by whether the Google results are regular search, Google News, Google Scholar, Google Image, Twitter, and YouTube, basically. And then basically try to push apart the circle packing. So then you can, because it's just a position of nodes in space, so you can play with different stuff. As I mentioned, you can change the shape, you can fill the nodes more or less, you can change the node color by default for sure, you can use a shaded material if you need. I can play with the height, even to extrude the nodes, and maybe in this case use a shaded material so we see a bit more. And this is all stems from the same a circle packing that I basically remodified a bit, but I think it's a nice very nice way to get started, and especially if you're used to and come from a dataviz background. So you can you can play around here, and notice that I can, by just let me remove this, I can also repack by domain name, so basically putting a node within a node, right? And it's still interactive. When you go here and you click, you will load the tweet, and you can open this or regular website here. So yeah, this is a more complex visualization, but you really get the idea, and it stems from the same D3 node that I created actually for this project. So I hope that that was okay, not too difficult. Two things that I didn't mention, and I know I'm running late already. Here you can specify two other functions, basically how you group stuff, because for now basically it takes just a number of value in each category, but you can go a bit further. So in our data set here we have something called wage. So I go here, and let's say now that I want to change the size of the nodes, not according to how many nodes are inside of each group, but according to another value. So here, for instance, wage. Then this particular input is a string, because you can type your own JavaScript function to group by value, to basically assign the size of each node. So it requires for you to know a bit of coding, but it's really simple. Let me show you what it looks like. It's just a string, right? And basically it says return, because the function has to return something. D would be the actual object you are looping over, so our each individual object here. D would be all the object, and then you have to write D dot the property you want, or any other function basically, to access it. So if I just say, hey, return D dot wage, and putting this into the custom value function, you see that this changes. So now I'm scaling the node inside according to how much each people earn in each sector. So you can know which sector is the most rich or poor and or more and on job and so forth, right? So this is very powerful. You can do any kind of grouping and sizing, and it's exactly the same for the sort function. So now imagine that I'm going back to the regular sector here, and I want to change how the nodes are ordered, like visually, and which node comes first. Then you can sort them, and you can decide, hey, I want to sort them by, I don't know, what did I do here? By seniority, right? So how senior you are in the job. And basically this code is just, so the node here is not called D anymore because it's a compare. You need to compare two values, so it's A and B. This is really standard if you do programming, but if you're not, I'm just trying to explain here. You access the data field, so you have all the properties that we covered, and so b.data.seniority minus this one, and if it doesn't exist because you are not in the root, like leaf nodes, but higher in the hierarchy, we don't have the data anymore because it's a group of nodes, then you just use the value. So it's, if it exists, you return this comparator, otherwise just use the value, right? So if you do this sort function here, it will change a bit of how this is displayed, and you can get crazy with this function. This is really sending the function to D3 and to the how do you group them hierarchically, and basically will change when you print the hierarchy to console. It would change how the nodes, the children here, are ordered. Basically, it's exactly what it does. Okay, so I hope that was not too much, but that is going to be useful for your projects. Think of this as just position, so you can use now circle packing, but draw other meshes instead. Do anything you want. This finally it just gives you, like, in the end, just an area of position, scale, and the nodes if you need to color them. And so in the next video, I hope that I'm going to be able to cover the tree map, which is another visualization that is based on the hierarchical structure. Until then, have a great time and keep using cables. See you. Bye-bye.